Hey everyone, welcome back. I know it's been a while. It's been a long time, okay? But I'm back, okay? Welcome to Lessons Learned. I got someone with me. His name is Joshua. Hey.
How you doing?
Good, how you doing?
Are you going to try my last name?
No, I didn't want to try. I did not want to try. I've been trying I know it starts with an E.
Encarnacion.
I'm not gonna say it again.
Encarnacion.
Encarnacion.
There we go.
I did it. Okay. So you want to tell everyone about yourself?
Yeah, how much do you want me to talk about myself? We could start at, I was born in 1992, or...
I mean, we could start from there and then build your way out.
Born in New York, Manhattan.
I thought 1992.
Mm-hmm. 1992. Shout out to the 80s babies that paved the way for us. But yeah, no, my family's from the Dominican Republic. My father immigrated straight from the island. My mother was born in Queens.
Oh, wow.
Product of, a lot of struggles in regards to what was going on in those times. My father got deported when I was 9 years old. My mother was 15 years older than me when she got pregnant.
Oh, wow.
I watched her just claw her way through the education system, learned a lot about oppression firsthand through her experiences, but also a lot about resilience and a lot about being able to make life work for you.
When you say life work for you, we want to talk about that more.
Yeah, just like being able to stand up for yourself in different ways, because it's not always about a fight, right? But sometimes it's about being your own advocate in quiet spaces.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
But that's made space for the work I do now. So I work as a coach and a consultant. For some folks, that means one-on-one time, helping them think about things differently, whether that's getting a job or doing well in their job. And then some of the other challenges like managing people or thinking about building a business. And then on the consulting side, it's working with different teams that are trying to take care of their folks more responsibly, which is not always the most fun, because sometimes it's like, how do we celebrate people that are doing well? Other times it's like, how do we fire everyone?
No, my thing is, like, how do you gain that trust from someone? Because, like, I know it's hard at least for me, like, it's hard to open up to someone that you don't really know. So how do you gain that trust from another person?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a multitude of things. There's always first that credibility from experiences. This isn't my first rodeo. Like, I've been doing this type of work in some capacity for now going on to year 10 maybe. Yeah, so year 9.5. But I've always been a study of people, and that translated into the work I do. Like, in college, I started in engineering, and then very quickly realized, like, a lot of engineers don't know how to communicate. Not every one of them, but a lot of them. And I think it's due to just, like, the mental tax of the work. Like, you got to pay attention to these intricate details.
Right.
I switched out of engineering when we started doing fluid mechanics.
Wait, what's fluid mechanics? That sounds hard.
Measuring the water pressure in a pipe.
Oh, no. I couldn't do that. I'll be out.
I was all set.
Yeah,
But I kind of already had a feeling before that I wanted to switch, because, funny story, my teammates would actually pay me to present, and I wouldn't actually do any of the homework.
That's so funny. So you were getting paid to talk to everyone.
Because and to the point around building the trust,
right.
They were like, we know he's gonna show up, and we know he's gonna bring the energy, and we know that's half of the equation. And so I was like, at first I was challenged by that, because I was like, why don't you just present?
Right.
Because you don't know what you don't know, and at that point I couldn't see myself. And so that kind of gave me an inkling of I like working with people, right? Even these engineers in my groups, they were we were all friends.
Yeah.
And we would go through different experiences, and they'd be like, "Yo, go ahead, do what you do."
Okay.
Switched into human resources.
When did you decide to switch into human resources? Right after that presentation, or
So that was sophomore year, towards the end of sophomore year, and it was actually prompted by a coach. This person opened my mind to making decisions for yourself. And that sounds so simple, but it was so painful at the time.
Yeah.
Because I have a Dominican mother. And I don't know if you've heard of the trope, but like immigrant parents want you to be a doctor, lawyer, or an engineer.
Yeah. Other than that, then what's the point?
And so because I was afraid of getting my ass kicked, I was going down the engineering route. But, you know, shout out to strong Black and brown women. Like, I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. She had me on the right path.
Right.
She wanted to make sure I didn't turn into or go through the struggles that my father had went through. Because, you know, he was deported.
Right.
I don't blame him for the decisions he made in terms of how he was sustaining our family, because you're talking about New York in the 80s, right? He was asked in Miami to wash dishes, right? And he was like, I'm all set.
That's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy how, like, our parents, you know, they have so much wisdom and knowledge, and they want us to, like, you know, do better. But then we just want to do our own things. Like, I got it. I want to do this and that. It's like, no, your parents want to help you. But at that time, you don't see it that way. Just, it's crazy.
I couldn't see it at all. And I mean, granted, like, I made the switch and it felt like a temporary relief at the moment. And I credit that coach till this day. His name is Dr. David Millstone. He's more like a mentor. But we grew a really tight relationship. I mean, we talk to this day. That was 12 years ago.
Wow.
Right?
That's crazy.
But he had asked me very lightly, like, I say lightly because the way he did it, it didn't seem like a big moment, but it smacked me in the face. He was like, I was rambling about something. He was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, you're supposed to tell me.
Right. I feel like it's kind of hard, though, especially with social media and just seeing people around you. Sometimes it's hard for you to take a step back and be like, okay, wait, what do I really want to do?
And I think that it transcends social media. So at the time, I mean, I had MySpace, I had Facebook.
MySpace.
Right? Like, let's talk about it, right? So, like, I had Facebook. I think Facebook was just starting to take off. But I didn't have Snapchat at the time. I didn't have Twitter at the time. I didn't have any of those things. You know, I was just talking to a friend about this. I was only just posting for the sake of posting.
Right.
Like, I didn't understand strategy. I didn't understand intentionality. I didn't understand, like, I was being perceived. You know, like, I would post what would be considered embarrassing now. Right. Where I think the world is starting to realize is real.
I know.
Like, because it got real performative at some point.
It really did.
I just remember I would post and people would be like, yo, you're wild, yo, you're crazy, yo, I'm like, I'm
me. Like, okay.
Like, do we get this or not?
Like, do you want me to hide myself or?
But yeah, so like, I mean, I think it transcends. Like, I know for what it was for me at the point was like, there was a feeling there. Like, I wanted to be accepted. And was it for my mother at the time? Probably. Right? But like at the same time, I wanted to be accepted for like what I want to do. And I had just went through a transition where I had to let go of football for a heart condition. So now I'm up against another transition, which is switching from engineering school. I had finished that year with a 3.7 GPA, and that was with the help of a program called College Now, where they take in Black and brown youth. And they make sure that, you know, they have all the habits in place to succeed in those environments. Shout out to that program. But
shout out.
Yeah, huge. A woman, another strong Black woman in my life that really put me on track, Carol Spencer. I remember coming late for her class one day. She was like, yo, get out. I was like, she was like, yo, get out. That's the last time I've ever been late to anything. But yeah, I was facing a transition, and he kind of like gave me permission. He was like, it's okay to switch. So I switched at the end of my sophomore year into coming into my junior year. I don't think I told my mom until like the end of my junior year. But my thought process was pretty clear, like at the time, for the time. You know, I had said to myself, I don't want to be an engineer, but I want to manage engineers. And that's where like this understanding of people really kicked in. So like when you ask like, how do you earn the trust? It's like, well, there's this deep level of empathy that it doesn't seem like it's not tangible, right? But you know when somebody has it, like you feel it. And although that can put people off in some lights because it's like terrifying, especially if you're not comfortable with your emotions. For those that like are honestly doing the work, not trying to manipulate people, not trying to like negatively influence them, but like genuinely trying to help, it's like a breath of fresh air.
It really is.
And that work is fascinating to me because I'm like, if that's not magic, I don't know what is.
Right.
And I remember crediting, David Millstone with like some form of magic. I was like, bro, how'd you know I needed to like think about this right now?
You must have saw it in you, like it's crazy.
So
it's crazy how it works.
It's wild. But yeah, like I think you're correct in saying like social media makes it hard because we're distracted. And I think like exercising or practicing like presence has become like finding gold.
Yeah. I definitely feel like, I'm kind of switching off topics a little bit, but I feel like for this year, 2022, it was a year where everyone was kind of looking at everyone and like seeing how hardships was happening and like how we were going through a lot of things. So I feel like this year is kind of like you were saying, like a breath of fresh air where we get to see like, okay, what do we need to work on? Like, what are the goals that we need to do so we can, make them?
Or we hope so, right?
Right.
Because it's just getting started. But I think like what is cool about 2022 is that we all had to confront the fact that we need to keep going. And that's not easy to like an easy pill to swallow. But like 22 was rough. And
it was very rough. Like
it's weird because 2019 with the introduction of the pandemic was just a lot of anxiety and like reorganization. 20 was like, is this gonna end? Are we on vacation until like right? And then 21 was like, okay, like what's the word? Like what's going on?
Right, like conspiracy theorists. Like,
everybody was like,
okay,
so
like this is fake. Oh yeah.
Okay, this passed. Now what is life?
Everyone's like dancing, like and then 2022, boom.
Real life,
like you thought you knew what you knew. Real life happened.
And I think it's just like we're going through that transition, trying to figure out what, like, with such drastic changes, like, is life gonna be on the internet? Like, and people are like, maybe. And some folks are like, yes, all the way. And other folks are like, absolutely not. But I mean, that's true with anything that's introduced. Right? Like you always have your like early adopters and you always have your Luddites, like folks that are just like, nah.
Not me.
And then there's the curve. But I think like this year like really like made that curve noticeable.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you.
But I think if I have to like kind of put thoughts around like how I see 2023, for me personally, I'm just thinking about practices. Like I'm not even thinking about goals. Like I wake up and the first thing I do is write to myself, and it's like, I know I'm gonna eat something today. Like every day.
Yeah.
What can I eat that'll be energizing? Right?
And I know we were talking about this before, like, do people still do resolutions anymore? They do.
I mean, I think like resolutions, goals, like however it's labeled,
all
like right, like people are looking for a change, and like how you enact that change or how you enable that change, that's personal to you.
Right.
That's why like again, like I say practices. Right.
I like that word.
But it's my way of coping with like, I gotta eat I have to run every day, like for myself. Right. Like, that could be considered a goal.
Right.
But like I'm just like, today if I run for 2 minutes, I'm satisfied. And like there was a day where I was like upset because I'm like pre-pandemic I was running a mile in less than 5 minutes.
What?
Savage.
He said savage. No, for real though.
I don't even know that person. Like
whoa.
Tap into a whole nother mode. But now I'm like, I ran a mile recently in 8 minutes and I'm like, oh wait.
Not savage.
Right? But I'm like, oh wait. If I do this every day.
That too, and I feel like we're hard on ourselves. Like, yeah, you just have to work your way up to it again. That's all it is.
And that's, I want to believe that's everyone that had to deal with the changes. Like these last 3-4 years have just been hard.
Literally changes after change after change.
And wrapping your head around that, like wrapping your heart around that, like keeping aligned with your own spirit. Having your own opinion. like, I can't. Like, sometimes people talk and I'm like, that was a tweet I just read. And I don't even have Twitter.
You're like, I saw that on Instagram.
Come on.
I know, that's so true. You have to, like, live your own path. Like, that's the thing. People are on social media way too much. They're not living their lives. So that's what you have to do. Do you have any, like, tips on having a fresh mindset into the new year?
I mean, gratitude. Gratitude.
Every day.
Every day. Like, it's a healthy dose of gratitude. It's like the best medicine. Because no matter what, like, we're moving forward. We get to breathe. We're doing things. And I personally can't let that escape me. That was ingrained in me a long time ago. I mentioned the heart condition.
Yeah.
That's something that I have to think about forever. And it was very traumatic, but it was a different type of trauma or a response to trauma that I experienced. And I went on to study this, right? Like, something happens to you and you can go one of two paths, and that's PTSD. And that's like taking this moment to say to yourself, like, this thing negatively impacted me. Or PTSG, which stands for post-traumatic stress growth. And I consider myself really lucky to have had that literature in front of me shortly after being diagnosed, because atrial fibrillation is something you can't see, but you experience. And I luckily am asymptomatic to a point where I really only have one sensation that I feel. My heart jumps out of rhythm. But what it feels like for me, like hooked up on a machine, it's like if your heart's like beep, 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 what the doctors read and what you hear if you're in the hospital with me is and then like a long pause. Because it's going from like 30 to like 130 back and forth.
Damn.
And that's out of rhythm. Yeah. But like, I personally
like you feel fine.
Fine. Like if I have it right now,
like,
I'm like,
you're fine. You're chilling.
I'm like, Tia, bring me to the emergency room. You're like,
what?
For what?
You're like, why?
And then it gets so dramatic. So okay, I've had this happen 13 times. Like this procedure. So you bring me to the hospital. And I go to the front and I'm like, hey, I'm having an episode of atrial fibrillation. And they're like, oh, okay, you can sit over there. And like, they're like, he's fine, because I look fine, right? Then they run an EKG and they're like, sir, your heart is like completely out of control.
You're like, yeah.
Stop! Put him in a bed! Blah, blah, blah. So I'm late. Like, it went from like, go ahead and sit over there. Like, we'll call you in 10 minutes. And like, I'm sitting next to a person that like legit has like a cut on their head. Another person's like coughing like crazy. Like, you know, you can imagine with the emergency room. And I'm sitting there like, And then I get into the bed and they're just like, take a clothes, like, put this on.
Really be going from like a 0 to 100.
0 to 1,000. And so then I'm in the bed and I'm like, bro, like, how did we get here? And the doctor's like, you need to sign this paper, because if this procedure goes wrong and you die, not our fault. And I'm like, I don't even have the time to process like, how this just got
okay, you're literally just, oh my.
And then they do conscious sedation, so like I'm sleeping, and like I can hear beep, and it's like, oh, that's a flat line. And then for the most part, I don't feel anything. And then they're just like, clear. And then my heart's back to normal.
Oh my God, that's scary.
But that whole like thing in my life teaches me like, A, be grateful.
For real.
Like, cause every time I leave there, it's like you can see the piece off of me. Like, and in some ways it's almost like a restart. Like, it is unfair, but I have to look at it like that.
Right.
I have to. I can't not look at it like, cause if I go down this PTSD route, I won't even say hi to you, because I'd be so afraid. I have to be unafraid. So I'm like, I leave there and I'm like, like, bro, like, get these cords off me. And I go for a walk and I'm like, yes, my heartbeat's normal. Check, I'm good. Like, and it's real. It's like, oh God, like that happened. And
that's crazy. And like, you know, you sharing that story, not a lot of people would know that. You know, that's crazy.
Nope. And then like, also it's a lot of why, you know, like how we were talking about like our first conversation, like like, I had to practice being super present and mindful because I couldn't let my mind race because there was already so much to race about. So, like, when I'm in the presence of somebody, I'm like, I just want you to know I'm right here with you because it's almost like I'm holding on to not be anywhere else. And that feeling, I know people feel it, but also, like, when I became aware of it, it was a little bit overwhelming. So I understand when people rather not be present. And it made me, like, more not sympathetic, like, more, like, compassionate to someone wanting that presence. Because it's like, I get you, dog. Like,
wow, that I never really thought about that way. Like, that's, wow. Open.
But I mean, when you say, like, what can people step into 2023 with, it's like, I want everyone to have that. If I had a choice, that's what I think.
Gratitude and be present. Like, be there for someone. That's great. Because people, you think, like, someone doesn't need someone, but they really do. Like, reach out to that person. Let them know, like, hey, how you doing? You know, I just feel like we need that more.
Totally. And then people forget, like, what's the worst case scenario? Like, you get ignored.
Right.
Next.
Move on.
And we do it with social media, but we don't do it in real life.
Like, what? It's so weird how we don't do it in real life, but on social media we do it no problem.
All the time we're like, scroll next. Block. Comment. Oh, you want to respond to my comment? Another comment.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But yeah, I think I want to stand in that for 2023. So I couldn't answer that question any other way.
I guess, like, maybe my last question would be, what are you willing to learn this year for 2023?
I think it's willing to relearn, and really it's discipline. Like, discipline. And I don't even mean that to sound like trying to say something cool. Like, I literally mean, like,
no, I feel you. Because we all need discipline, okay? Like, we need to stick to it and be consistent. Consistency. I think if relearning discipline is, like, the thing, consistency is, like, the thing to learn. Yeah. Because I feel like I haven't been around long enough to be so consistent that I truly understand what that means. And I mean that in every sense of the word. Like relationships, being consistent. Like, the whole shit is tired. Like, that's a whole nother conversation. Relationships. Oh my goodness. I mean, but it's, like, so important. Like, we don't understand. Like, I think the whole world got lost with, again, social media. Like, we definitely gotta, like, talk about that. That's huge. Because that's, like, a whole hour thing. I think we talked about that. Yeah, we did talk about that when we first met, because we were talking about relationships, like, how. Yep. And how different it was about friends, and how, like, even that, because it's become transactional. Like, folks are like, oh, well, next person, and it's like, damn, dog, like, that's so, like, it's fucked up, honestly. Like, next, like that song Ariana Grande, Thank You Next. I'm like, damn, like, at least, like, take some time to learn yourself, learn what happened in a relationship, and then go. Like, why are you moving on to a whole nother person? And I think that's the consistency. And then also discipline, like, instead of just pressing that button. So I think of it from that perspective. I think of it from, like, so, like, even with the work I'm doing, like, back to how I wake up in the morning and think about practices. Like, I've been writing for now close to, like, 10 years, but, like, what I do is I write from what I'm experiencing in different moments, and then I quickly move on to the next thing to write about. So it's funny because, like, I feel like I can describe a situation with great detail, but I haven't strung along situations. And so, like, building that habit of writing is more so, like, staying on a topic longer. And that's hard, especially, again, when we talk about, like, the lack of attention. Like, we're like, next, right? So it's, like, back to, like, all right, how do I stay on this topic for more than a day? But then again, we were talking about social media that wants to continue to switch right, especially, like, TikTok. Like, I know a lot of people watch TikTok and stuff. Like, your time span is, like, what, like 3 minutes, not even. Some people, like, swipe after that, right? So it's, like, those pieces, like, how do I
make sure that I'm staying consistent, to your point, through the discipline of like revisiting something. Even if it hurts, like I know that I can work through it versus trying to avoid it, versus trying to bury it, versus trying to like act as if it didn't exist. And so that to me is like the epitome of what I want to practice in 2023, and like how I feel like I need to relearn that. Because even like eating the same food, for example, like a second time, like I grew up in a household where we ate rice and beans every night, and then I remember,
so
you know what I mean? And then I remember like being happy every time with the same plate. Now I'm not saying like I don't want to try new foods, right? But I definitely I remember like the pendulum swing, and then being like I only want to eat things I've never eaten before,
right.
And it's like, all right, calm down.
Rice and beans are good though.
Yeah, like that's what I'm cooking later.
Right. Yo, give me a plate. Give me one.
Got you. But the balance, like balancing like the new and like those habits and those routines, and like I don't think that's all that like esoteric or far-fetched, right? Like when people make goals, they think like we gotta shoot for the moon, and I'm like, yes, but
because we're always like in a rush, so that's why.
I couldn't put it any better way. Like that rushing feeling.
I know. I understand it too, but then also it might be regions where we're like living, because like I feel like up here we're always rushing, but if we were down south it's not like as rushed.
But it's changing.
That is true.
It's changing. Like everyone
wants it fast.
And I think it's like, again, growing up, like, how do I put, like, this is the most raw I'll be on this interview, right? But like, you was a nigga from New York, like, you were okay with that.
No, right.
From the South, you were okay with that. Now you got cats coming out of New York.
You're like,
trying to.
What the fuck?
What's happening on the West Coast?
Right.
What's happening?
Everyone's hopping from.
Right,
everywhere.
And that definitely influences you. And so, like, you can think about that so many ways, right? Like, I think it's cool. We get access to learn everything. But it's like, if I'm living this life, like, accepting it, you know, like it's funny because, like, even revisiting, like, Dominican roots.
Right.
Right? Like, why was I so quick to want to run away from stuff? I think something's always going to have to change.
Always. I mean, you living in this life, you always going to have to change. You're always here to learn something, too. So that's part of the life, you know?
That's why I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope a lot of people can hear you and asking that and say to themselves, like, all right, I do have to commit to learning something.
Yeah, you know, like, you're always learning something. So it's like, what's the main thing you want to learn for this year? You know? Instead of having a resolution, what's the main thing you want to learn?
I like that.
You know?
I like that.
Ask everyone that.
But that's the energy.
Yeah.
And I think that's a healthy way to like keep balance. So
nice. Any last words you want to say to anyone? Anyone that's watching?
Subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe. I didn't even say that at all. Subscribe.
Where's the button? Right.
Press the button. I think it's gonna be right here.
Right there.
Right there. Well, thank you so much, Joshua. Do you want me to call you Josh or Joshua?
I'm a Joshua.
Joshua.
There are things you should know to learn from and to grow. Dealing with emotions to create decisions, let it show. I need a lesson. I need a lesson. I need a lesson.